Hench, Chapter 3. Show me the road to get away from home. So you might be wondering what my plans were for after I left university. How did I get from there to where I'm talking now? We'll get to more about that later, but there was one place I know I had to go. I dreaded going. I did not want to go, but I had to go home to see, or maybe not see, my parents. My parents and I had a very estranged relationship. Just seeing them was almost as rare as seeing a full red moon while 12,000 horses ran past you and owls decided to poke out your eyes at the same time. But more about that later, and who really raised me. So I hopped in my car and I made the sad march home. Brent decided to go straight home rather than taking any detours and stops. It was about a 3-hour drive. During the nights, he slept in the back of his car. In the day, he drove under the influence of too many cups of coffee, energy drinks, and some random pill he found on a small shop that suggested it would help keep him going. But he was unsure what it meant, that it would keep him awake, or he could stay in bed all night long with a woman for many, many hours. It was highly suggestive. He was a little afraid to find which one was true, to be honest. Driving with something distracting him would not be good, and if he got home before it wore off, that most definitely would be even worse. Most of the time, he just stared ahead in a daze, wondering what he was going to tell his parents, regretting some of the choices he made, wondering what would he do if he went back in time to change things. Now this also led to a wild tangent of thoughts of science fiction and time travel, like if he could have another superpower, what superpower would it be? Which led him to thinking about his favorite comics book. He was never one to keep a steady straight thought. They always seemed to fly around like butterflies trying to find a sweet plant. He was sure he had some form of ADD, but his parents were never around to take him to the doctors, and he was too lazy to go himself. He was driving down the highway when he saw the sign he was trying to avoid all this time. He wanted to just turn around the car and go away from the sign that simply said in bold letters, "Welcome to Balewick, home of the Pines." The sign told him that he was back home and under 20 minutes away from his parents' house. The last time he saw it, he was leaving to the university and swore that he would never see that sign again. He drove and approached a large metal gate that separated the long driveway to the main road into the town. Despite being at the gate, he knew he still had another 10 minutes drive until he reached the house proper. He sometimes felt that his parents had such a long driveway built to make sure he could never escape the hellhole that was his house, that he would be too tired by the time he had reached the gate and would just turn back and go back home. He was confused when he first went to his dorm room in the university. All the other students who were there moving in at the same time had their parents with them. Their parents would drive them to the campus, carry the bags, and bid them a teary farewell, then call 2 to 3 times a day just to check in and see if they needed anything for their new life. Brent's parents, on the other hand, never took him to the school, never called. Hell, they never even said goodbye to him. Not even take him to the gate. They didn't even call him. But he expected as much. He took a deep breath and pressed the button on the intercom. Mentally, he counted 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And exactly at 1, a hiss came through the speaker, telling him that the butler had picked up on the other side. How did he know it would take this long? He clearly remembered one of the few times he saw his father. That his father reminded the butler to always wait to 5. "If answer too quickly, it is unseemly and looks desperate. If you wait too long, it makes us look lazy and underprepared. I cannot let that happen. My enemies shall pounce if they see the timing is off. He scolded the servants as he strolled up and down the line as if he was a drill instructor, rifling a gun over his shoulder, just to prepare the overall image of what he's been trying to cultivate over the many decades. At one point, Brent thought his father might actually shoot someone in the staff for disobeying him. "Crinklewood Estates, and to whom am I addressing?" An elegant upper-class English accent came from the speaker. Brent couldn't help but smile when he heard the voice. "Hey, Simon! It's me!" There was a pause. "Excuse me, sir, but you must have the wrong address. No one tenanting here at this abode goes by such a title, and if anyone wished to come to this house, they would not address the box as such." Laughing, knowing that using his real name would get under the butler's collar and riled up, as riled up as he could get. Not that you would know it, the biggest reaction he ever saw from the butler was when he tried to run away from home. When he was 8, the butler simply narrowed his eyes and dragged the young Brent back home. Aside from that, the butler always kept a neutral face. The one thing that Simon, the butler, detested while working was to be addressed by his given name, Simon. His father decided Simon was not an appropriate name for a butler. Instead, he forced the name Jeeves upon the butler. Though he had no proof, Brent always thought that, in secret, when he was off the clock, the butler would stand in front of the mirror saying, "Your name is Simon. Your name is Simon. Your name is Simon," repeating it over and over in order not to forget his own given name. "My apologies, Jeeves. Would one care to allow one to enter the estate on terms of social visitation?" Brent mocked the blue money accents that he heard all too often during his childhood. "Master Brent, welcome home. Please drive up to the end of the driveway. I will have the valet ready." A buzz rang him in from the intercom box, and the large metallic gates slowly swung open. As on cue, the sky darkened and rain started to pour down. Rather ominous sign. "Welcome home, Brent." He slowly drove down the driveway that was surrounded by the trees. After what felt like an eternity, the top of the mansion came into view. Backlit by the dark clouds, he felt like he was acting in his own personal 30s horror movie. The only thing that was missing was the fog and the creepy organ, and perhaps a large group of local villagers waving fire torches and brandishing pitchforks. But that could still happen. If Hitchcock was still alive, he would have been a perfect shooting location for one of his movies. The house, or Crinklewood Manor, as it was referred to, was an imposing sight. Housing over 20 bedrooms, 10 bathrooms, 3 dining rooms, several offices, 5 stories tall with turrets sticking out, and a host of secret passages, the manor was the largest of its kind in the state. He never realized it when he was living there, but he was not permitted to watch television when he was a kid. But after moving, his friends introduced him to a cartoon called Scooby-Doo. He now knew he lived in the Scooby-Doo monster house. He wished his friends could be with him to see it. And he wished he had some special Scooby snacks with him still. He pulled up and stopped his car in front of the over-large fountain. As he expected, a line of 10 servants stood like statue penguins in their black and white tuxedos. The servant in the center of the line, dressed in a pinstripe suit and standing out from the others, took a step forward and greeted Brent. "Master Brent, welcome back home. I was not expecting your arrival. Please, forgive my lack of foresight for not preparing your room." He gave a slight bow. "Okay, I see what you mean, Jeeves, but why so formal? Come here, man, come here. You're the one thing I've missed from this place." Brent stepped forward to give the butler a hug. Even though he meant it as a joke, he realized that he actually did miss the polite older man with salt and pepper hair. Awkwardly, the butler wriggled out of his embrace. He looked more like a mouse caught in a trap and trying to wriggle free from its prison. Patting and smoothing his clothes down, then readjusting his always immaculate tie, he gave a cough. "Quite so, sir. And it's jolly good to see you too." He clapped his hands, and two other servants took one step forward from the line. "Marterson, Flichand, take Master Brent's belongings into his room and prepare new linens for the bed." The slender man named Marterson walked to the back of the car and opened the trunk of the car. He stared into the trunk, turning slightly white and pale. Slowly, he reached in and pulled out two foul-smelling black trash can bags filled with unwashed clothes. The man held it at arm's length, trying to put as much distance between himself and the foul-smelling bags. Jeeves clapped his hands again. "Prepare some food for the young master. I shall inform his parents of his arrival." He looked at Marterson, still holding the bags. "Take those to the young master's room. Now, young master, I am sure you must be tired from your journey. Go wash, and I will prepare some linens and some new clothes. You shall be joining your parents for dinner shortly." Brent went inside. When he was out of sight, Jeeves turned back to Marterson and Flichand. He looked at them, then back at the bags, and shook his head. Sliding his hand into his waistcoat pocket, he pulled out a shiny silver lighter and tossed it to Flichand, then nodded, turned around again, and followed Brent back inside the manor. Brent stopped at the entranceway into his childhood home. He paused, looking inside. Everything that had happened suddenly hit him. His heart started to race. He found it difficult to breathe. Bending over, he tried to fill his lungs with air, but it was too hard. He felt a cool hand rest on his shoulder. Looking up, he saw an aged lady in her late 60s looking down at him with a gentle smile. Her hair had turned a brilliant white since last time he had saw her, but the rest of her reminded him of being a kid. His nanny, Bertha. Bertha was the one woman in his life who looked after him, cared for him, spanked him when he needed it. In many ways, she was the mother he never had. He thought it was his imagination as being a small kid, that she was this towering tall woman. But even now, that he was fully grown, she still stood well over him. "It's good to see you again, Master Brent." She looked over him. "You look like shit. Go shower, go change, go shave. And for hell's sake, just change everything about you right now." She pointed up at the twisting staircase. Brent smiled, remembering that she was the one person in the house who didn't care who he was or who his parents were. She spoke her mind and said screw off if you didn't like it. He recalled once seeing her make a major international bank manager cry when he acted improperly during a visit. "It's good to see you too, Bertha." Brent reached his old room and slammed the door behind him. The house was so big he knew there was no one close enough to even hear him do it. He sat on the edge of his bed and looked around at his old room. It was full of textbooks, models, but nothing else much. Despite his parents being some of the wealthiest people in the country, they never bought him anything or allowed him to follow his own hobbies. From the age of 2, he was told that he would become a banker, that in many ways made him the person he was. To revolt against his parents and their wishes to become a banker. He did not want to be the same as the rest of the peers in his group. "Screw that! Have to deal with this BS sooner or later." Taking off his clothes, he entered his private bathroom that was the same size as a small house and cleaned up. As one final screw you to his parents, he decided not to shave and kept the stubble on his face.